Mr. Chair, it is now 5 o'clock.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone. Sorry for the delay. It takes a minute for me to get open here. I need to open my script and my agenda and my virtual screen. So I'll typically attend virtually, but unfortunately today I couldn't. So I'm going to ask the planner for some help. So the committee members, who do we have online and who do we have in person?
In person, we have Michelle Ladresse, Kathy Moore Coburn, Ron Glenn, and then yourself virtually. We do not have Elgin McMillan online or in council chambers.
Okay, so Elgin's not able to attend today. Do we have regrets from Elgin, or do we know?
No regrets received.
Okay. Welcome. Sorry that I was not able to meet everyone last night. And I do want to make sure that I get your name right, Michelle. So can you help me with the pronunciation?
Michelle Ladresse.
Ladresse?
Ladresse.
Thank you. All right. Well, welcome to everyone. And since it's past the hour of 5, I'll now call this meeting to order. And I'll begin with the land acknowledgement statement. And I would like to say that we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabeg, the people of the three fires known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further, we give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. So I'll next move to the approval of the agenda, and I'll read the recommendation that the agenda be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Kathy Coburn and seconded by, I'm going to have to say, I can only see Councillor Coburn. I can't see anybody else. I don't know if we can pivot the screen at all, or if that's just the way it is. Anyone?
Mr. Chair, we're just checking to see if we can have it zoomed out.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, a suggestion might be if you can pin the live stream on your Teams.
I can see the live stream. So in the live stream screen, I can see from Councillor Coburn to the edge of my chair.
Okay, so if you hover over where it says live stream, 3 little dots should appear.
Correct.
Does it allow you to pin?
Got it. Oh,
better?
Look at you. I can see everyone.
Great.
I can see everyone. Welcome. Okay, so I have a mover. Do I have a seconder for the approval of the agenda? Committee member Glenn, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, approved. Are you approved, Councillor Coburn? Thank you. That motion is carried. So I'll ask for a declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I'll let all the committee members know they can declare at any time. I'm certain we've all gone through the riveting Committee of Adjustment learning modules and know everything we need to know about pecuniary adjustment and everything else Committee of Adjustment related. So I'll move to new applications. So for PL 2023.03, it has been demonstrated. Wait, I've got to go back to my script here. So I'm going to ask the planner for some support. Do I read the recommendation first?
Mr. Chair, you referred to your public hearing script for Blair and Brett Freeman.
So maybe
And
I'm
then,
not on the script. It says refer to the application script.
yeah, so you should have a copy of the application script.
My apologies. Got it. All right, thank you. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for consent for Blair and Brett Freeman under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at 117280 Concession 5. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this consent in accordance with Ontario Regulation 197/96 made under the Planning Act was given on November 28, 2022 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters of the property which is subject to the application and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands in the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the committee in respect to this proposed consent may submit an appeal.
Mr. Davidson, welcome. Please feel free to present the application.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Davidson. I am a planning consultant, and I filed the application on behalf of Brett and Blair Freeman. I think Blair was hoping to join us tonight. Sorry. My apologies. I was staring right at him. Anyway, so what we're dealing with tonight is a consent application, and tomorrow night council will be looking at the associated zoning bylaw amendments. So Blair and his wife are bona fide farmers, and they bought this property in June of last year. It's just over 100 acres in size. It is designated agricultural. The County of Grey official plan and the provincial policy statement gives consideration to what we call a surplus farmhouse severance. And what that means is if a bona fide farmer owns at least one other property and farms it and lives on it and acquires a property like the Freemans have here now, and there's a house on it, it is surplus to their needs. Obviously, they don't need two houses to live in. And again, the county official plan and the provincial policy statement allow for that house to be severed off. The intent is to, because it's generally good agricultural land, is to make sure that the lot is kept as small as possible. So what Blair and Brett would like to do from this 100-acre or 40.64 hectare property is sever a lot that's 1.376 hectares in size. And I believe you all have a drawing of that, of the severance sketch in your package. We call that, planners call that shape of the lot flag shaped because it's really narrow, like a flag pole at the front of the property, and it balloons out at the back like the large part of a flag, and you can see it there. It's not, it again is somewhat irregular even at the back because the property, the proposed lot lines go around the buildings and attempt to keep as much actively farmland in production and kept with the retained parcel. So that's a description of the severed parcel. There's also a couple of easements that are being proposed that would go along with the severance. First is a 3-meter wide easement that would recognize the existing underground cable that feeds electrical power generated by the 2 solar panels that will stay on the retained parcel. And that will connect to the Ontario Hydro One system via a utility pole that's on the severed parcel. And then secondly, the Freemans are proposing a 10-meter wide easement across the front portion of the property to permit a future tile under the driveway when Mr. Freeman tiles his farmlands. And again, you can see that on the drawing that I've submitted. So this requires approval from, again, your committee for the severance and the associated easements, and then tomorrow night from council. Tomorrow night, council will be looking at a zoning bylaw amendment to do a couple of things. One, it will reduce the lot frontage requirement of the AG zone for the severed parcel from 100 meters down to 11 meters. And secondly, it will reduce the lot area requirement for the retained parcel from 40 hectares down to 39.2 hectares, and at the same time apply a no dwelling clause to the parcel. So the no dwelling clause, what that means is the provincial policy statement, and again, it's reflected in the county official plan. It does give consideration to the severing of a surplus farmhouse, even though the lands are prime agricultural lands. But there has to be a no house clause put on the balance of the property. So in other words, the Freemans are coming to you guys saying, hey, listen, this house is surplus to my needs. I want to sever it off, and I want to keep the so-called 99 acres or 96 acres or whatever. But he can't turn around and put a house on it, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose of severing off. So there's going to be a clause placed on the property by council if and when they adopt the zoning bylaw that would say on the balance of the property, the Freemans can never build another house, nor do they intend to do that. That's generally it for my presentation. Again, it does conform with the official plan. 100%. It is clearly consistent with the provincial policy statement. It is something that's allowed, and in my mind, it makes good planning sense. That's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. No one has registered with the clerk to comment on the application. Does the committee have any questions or comments? Committee member Glenn, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Ron, the comment around the restrictive covenant being put on the retained piece for no future residents, is that a clause in the zoning bylaw, or is it a clause registered on title?
In the zoning bylaw, and that is standard in, I can't speak for outside of Grey and Bruce, but it's standard in Grey and Bruce counties.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, committee member Glenn, you're satisfied with the answer? Any more questions? Okay, seeing none, I now will call for a vote on the motion of the decision. It has been demonstrated that the proposed application is consistent with the PPS, conforms with the county OP, and complies with the general intent of the township zoning bylaw. It is recommended that consent application B22/22 be approved subject to the following conditions: that the reference plan be completed and a copy be filed with the municipal clerk, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the Land Registry Office; that pursuant to Section 53, Paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of giving the notice of decision. Note, Section 53, Paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate. 3, that the applicant pays the applicable consent certification fee at the time of the certification of the deeds. That the applicant pays 5% cash in lieu of parkland in accordance with the Planning Act. That the applicant provide a letter from a BCIN designer or a structural engineer verifying that the existing farmhouse is habitable. 6, that a supporting zoning bylaw amendment be in force and effect to rezone the proposed retained lands to a site-specific zone under the AG zone to prohibit the future construction of a new residential dwelling of any type, to reduce a recognized minimum frontage of 145 meters, and to recognize a reduced minimum lot area of 39.2 hectares. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will now call the vote. All those in favor? That motion is carried, approved. I will now call for an adjournment of this hearing. Can I have a mover?
Chair
Oh.
Thompson, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just noted that Mr. Davidson had his hand up, and I just wondered if he wanted to speak or if this is even the time for that. Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Davidson?
Just a quick question here about the one condition for the requirement to have somebody certify that the house is habitable. There's people living in there now. I mean, is that necessary to include that condition? Sounds like an extra expense.
Councillor Coburn.
So I don't know the answer to that question, but I wonder if that's something our senior planner, I mean, is that just doing our due diligence and best practice? Or is there some other reason?
Thank you, Member Coburn. That's what we have done with previous applications for surplus farmhouse dwellings, so that it demonstrates that it's a habitable structure.
Okay. Looking to the committee, are we satisfied with the motion as read and approved? Okay. I will now call for an adjournment of this hearing. Mover, moved by Councillor Coburn, seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. All in favor? That motion is carried. This public meeting is now adjourned. Just give me a second to get to our next script. This is a meeting of the Committee Adjustment to consider the application for minor variance for Michael van den Bos under Section 45 of the Planning Act regarding property located at 237-193 Sunny Valley Road South. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this minor variance hearing in accordance with Ontario Regulation 200/96 made under the Planning Act was given on November 28th, 2022 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 60 meters of the property which is subject to the application and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the Township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the Committee in respect to this proposed minor variance may submit an appeal. And Mr. van den Bos is here to present the application.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. van den Bos. You can come to the front and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike van den Bos, and well, this is all kind of new to me, but anyways, I guess long and short, the bylaw has any property under 2 acres in size is allowed to build an accessory building up to 5% of their property size. I am just over that. I'm 2.1 with a bunch of other numbers behind it, acres. And then the bylaw goes to you can only have a accessory building 1% the size of your property. So just because I'm just over that, on a smaller property, you could build up to 4,000 square feet. As it sits, I'm only allowed to build up to just over 900. I'd like to build around a 2,500 square foot storage accessory building. So that's I'm hoping for an amendment there so I can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van den Bos. So no members of the public registered with the clerk to provide comments in support of or in opposition to the application. Do the committee have any questions or comments regarding the proposed application? Councillor Coburn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Thompson, and through you to our presenter. I just I want to be sure that this detached building will be for personal use. It's not related to business but rather pertains to the uses that are currently existing on the property.
Mr. Van den Bos, you can feel free to respond.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. He did respond. Maybe forgot to put on his microphone.
Yes, it's just for personal use of the property.
Thanks for adding the context. I thought it was interesting that you just walked away with nothing. This will be much better when I can attend on a regular basis. Thanks very much, Mr. Van den Bos. So let me get back to the script here. I will now call for a motion on the decision. This variance has been found to satisfy the 4 tests of a minor variance as required by the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, and accordingly it is recommended that application A11-22 be approved subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall obtain written confirmation from EGI prior to engaging any site works that the proposed works will not impact EGI services and provide confirmation along with any updates to the site plan if required to the township to demonstrate compliance with this condition of approval and the zoning bylaw. Is there any further discussion?
Apologies, Mr. Chair. You need a mover and a seconder.
Oh, pardon me. Yes, a mover. Committee member Glenn, do you have a question or are you offering to move?
No, I have a question, then I'll move
Okay.
it.
Yep.
My only question is when we make the recommendation and we create it with acronyms in it, which doesn't relate to the report. For example, we're saying EGI here, but nowhere in the recommendation do we say who EGI or what EGI means, and it means Enbridge Gas Inc. So that it's clear for the applicant that's what they have to do if they don't read the planning report.
Great suggestion.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
if I could just add, the decision that is prepared for the committee does identify it as Enbridge Gas Inc. Apologies for the acronym on the script.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move approval.
Okay, that motion is moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by Councillor Coburn. All in favor? That motion is carried. I will now call for an adjournment of this hearing. Moved by Councillor Coburn, seconded by committee member Ladresse. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion is carried.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. I think you might be muted.
Yeah, good catch. Where did you want me to go back to? The adjournment of the last meeting, or did you hear that first?
I did see your lips moving, but I will leave
Okay,
that up to
so-
the committee.
So from a process standpoint, let's call. Do we have a mover and a seconder, correct?
Yes.
Okay, let's call for that vote again to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor? That is carried. That meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Sorry for that, folks. So now we'll move to the next item on the agenda. That's a minor variance application, A-11-22 for Keith and Kathy Fleming. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for minor variance for Keith and Kathy Fleming under Section 45 of the Planning Act regarding property located at 504-693 Gray Road 1. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this minor variance hearing in accordance with Ontario Regulation 200/96 made under the Planning Act was given on November 28, 2022 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 60 meters of the property which is subject to the application and to all of the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the Committee in respect to this proposed minor variance may submit an appeal.
Mr. Fleming, welcome. Please present your application.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you to this Committee of Adjustment for considering this application for minor variance. And I'd also like to thank Jen Burnett for her assistance along the way in preparing this application. My name is Keith Fleming, and I'm here with my wife, Kathy. And we have owned the property in question for the past 33 years and have used it as a 4-season of the year cottage all that time. And pending acceptance of this application, we're looking forward to building a permanent home on the property and finally becoming full-time residents of Georgian Bluffs. The purpose is to enable construction of a permanent residence in a shoreline residential area. The bylaw would need to be amended. 24% lot coverage of the proposed residence exceeds by 9% the maximum lot coverage of 15% permitted in this particular zoned area. Essentially, minor variance allows us to include an attached garage, attached deck to the home. Given our ages, we obviously would prefer an attached garage over one that's detached. And the topography of the lot is such that were we to just build a house without a garage and then apply for a minor variance to build a detached garage, that would be very limiting, and it would require requesting quite a significant variance for the various setbacks. I'd like to point out that in planning for this build, we've been very careful to comply with all the required setbacks from adjacent properties, from the shore road allowance, and from the county road out front. So we're not requesting any adjustments to the established setbacks. We also think that there's a significant benefit of this proposal in that all three of the existing structures on the shore road allowance, there's a cottage, there's a garage, and a shed, they will all be removed. The plan before you indicates that a small utility shed will remain, but it's also going to be removed. I'd also point out that we've occupied the property for 33 years, so we know that there have never been any drainage issues. And we're quite confident with the swales that have been incorporated into the engineered site plan that will ensure that drainage is not a problem in the future. A small point, perhaps, it's not worth mentioning, but I do point out that the notice of complete application on public hearing document refers to a request to increase the total lot coverage by 10%, from 15% to 25%. I believe the site plan indicates an increase that's closer to 9% rather than 10% for lot coverage of 24%. The official plan permits low-density residential development in this area, and that doesn't change with this application. I think that's essentially the gist of it.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. No members of the public have registered with the clerk to provide any comments in support of or in opposition to the application. Does the committee have any questions or comments regarding the proposed application? Committee member Ledresse.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment. I went to visit the site today, and it is. Right? Okay. I went to visit the site today, and there is quite a slope. And the current cottage and the current garage is very, very close to the shoreline. So I appreciate the application moving the house up further from the water to I don't know, for future uses and save yourself from the water, like as we've seen that what it's done over the last couple of years.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. We think it is an improvement to get all those buildings off the shore road allowance where they don't belong.
Committee member Glenn, you have the floor.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One's more clarification maybe for staff. The application itself says on the site plan that the proposed dwelling is 335 square meters. But in the notice, it says it's 451 square meters. And that's a significant difference in the size of the dwelling that's being proposed. I wonder if we can get a clarification on what is actually being proposed.
If I might respond, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you.
This is Rebecca Elphick. I prepared the planning report for this application. So the discrepancy in the ground floor area of the proposed detached dwelling comes from a discrepancy between the application and the site plan. So the application provides dimensions of the proposed dwelling that, when multiplied to produce the area, come up with the 451.2 square meters, but the site plan shows a different figure. So perhaps the applicant could confirm the ground floor area that's proposed.
Mr. Fleming?
So, notice off the top of my head at this point. The well, the main floor square footage plan is 2,165 square feet. If that, I haven't got that in meters for you. I also, if it is of any assistance to the committee, I also do have drawings of the elevations of what the property looks like. It's just concerns about it being, well, I would say it's not overly large, but
My concern is that if it's 451 square meters, it's not a 25 or 24% lot coverage because the lot's only 1,393 square meters. It's significantly larger than that. It's more in the range of 40% lot coverage based on that lot size.
and I'm basing it on what the engineers have provided for me when they drew in their drawing. These are not my calculations. So I've got a lot area 1393.55. And
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could I make a recommendation to defer the application to, or the decision on the application to February so that we can determine the correct figures for and lot coverage being proposed?
I think that makes sense to me. So, I guess we are going to need an amendment to your recommendation. Is that how we would do that from a procedural standpoint?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So before we do that, are there any more questions that we have before we go away? We may as well do, yeah, Committee Member Glenn, you did say you had more than one question. You're right.
Yeah, I do. I have a couple of other questions. One is, I noticed when I was at the site today that there's been a significant amount of tree clearing that's occurred in preparation for it. And I also noticed a significant slope. And it looks like by your site plan that the house is going to be built into the slope.
it'll be a walkout, so much of it will be on top, but it will also be built into the slope.
So has there been any slope stabilization report that you've done in preparation of trying to build the house?
Beyond what the engineers who have prepared the site plan for us and their recommendations for, there are on the plan recommendations for some retaining blocks to be put in place. But I also heard from Jen today that there will also be a requirement for I guess secondary engineering study. I can't quite remember the term you used, but.
So I'm wondering through Mr. Chairman that since we're deferring it until February, if the proponent couldn't do investigations with regards to slope stabilization as part of the construction. So it's going to be a condition of the consent. It'd be nice to know in advance. And then my last question is, I noticed on your site plan that you have a shared driveway.
Yes.
And do you have a long-term easement for that shared access?
We have a long-term, short, yes, we've had a 33-year agreement with them. I also consulted with them going forward about continuing to use that shared driveway.
Okay.
They've agreed to that. May I, just back to the numbers. So it's averages 3,581 square feet for the house, the porch, the deck, the garage, and the lot is 15,000 square feet.
Disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm just saying in the staff report,
Yeah.
it speaks to 451 square meters, which is about 4,500 square feet.
Yeah.
So I don't want us to approve something.
Sure.
I want to make sure what we're approving
And
is what you're proposing and not something different.
yes, and I agree. But I'm not quite sure, I didn't quite follow the explanation of where that staff number came from based upon the numbers that I provided in my application.
May
I
I
can't-
provide a response, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
So that calculation was derived from the building dimensions in the list of proposed buildings or structures in the application, which are 24 meters by 18.8 meters.
Right.
And through you, Mr. Chair, may I make a comment? Wes Petco. I work with Rebecca.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps the discrepancy relates to the numbers provided on the application, which gives one the impression that the dwelling is a square, whereas on the site plan, it has more nuanced dimensions, which could explain the discrepancy between what is included in our report and what is cited in both the application and site plan.
And yes, like this, and that's where I come back to the 4 separate calculations that arrive at 3581, which is 24% of 15,000. I would like it to be permitted at 24%.
Okay, so it sounds to me, unless you have another comment, Madam Planner, Senior Planner, I wonder if it makes sense. It sounds to me like we need to defer this to bring the application in line or identify the accurate dimensions on the application, and we also need to gather some information about the slope stabilization. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's what I understood Member Glenn to request.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if that's what you would like as a motion, I'll put that motion on the floor.
Yeah, I think so. So how do we need to craft a motion here? We're going to defer. So do we want to include the recommendations in the deferral? Turning to staff for some input on that.
Mr. Chair, I'll defer to Mr. Chair, I'll defer to our clerk, Carly Craig.
Okay.
Thanks, Jen. Through you, Mr. Chair. I do have a motion here amended to defer the application to the February 14th meeting of the Committee of Adjustment. We can add more specific requirements to that motion, but they will also be included in the minutes which form record of this committee. So I will leave it up to the committee to make that determination.
Well, I'm open to committee. I mean, I'll offer my thoughts. I always like to be kind of clear, but I'll leave it to the committee to see what the wish of the committee is. Councillor Coburn.
Yeah, I'd prefer that it be part of the motion so that it's specific and there rather than us having to look through the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the committee could please clarify what they're seeking, and I can just make the quick amendment to this motion. My apologies.
I think don't want to speak for committee member Glenn, but I think what we need to do is be specific about the dimensions. So we're looking for dimensions in both documents that line up or that match each other. And I think we're looking for some information about site stabilization. Would you say that I've covered that accurately, committee member Glenn?
Yes, that's fine, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. Okay,
So Madam Clerk, can I ask that you read the motion?
Of course.
Thanks.
So I have that. My apologies. So that application A11-22 be deferred to the February 14th meeting of the Committee of Adjustment, and that the dimensions in the site plan and planning application be confirmed, and that slope stabilization measures be clarified in advance of that meeting.
All right. Can I ask for a mover and a seconder for that motion? Moved by Committee Member Glenn and seconded by Councillor Coburn. Are there any further discussion on the motion? No, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? That motion is carried, so we'll defer that to the February meeting. I'll now ask for an adjournment, call for an adjournment of this meeting. Moved by Councillor Coburn, seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion is carried. Thank you, staff. So I'll move to the next item on our agenda. Take me a second here. Sorry, folks. All right, our next meeting is a meeting of the Committee Adjustment to consider the application for consent for Heather Curry and the estate of Doug Curry under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at 718073 Highway 6. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There has been no request for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this consent in accordance with Ontario Regulation 197-96 made under the Planning Act was given on November 28, 2022 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 60 meters of the property, which is subject to the application, and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the Committee in respect to this proposed consent may submit an appeal.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson, will you please present the application?
I would be happy to do that. So I have filed this application on behalf of Heather Curry with me here tonight, and the purpose is to sever a lot. So Heather owns a property that's just over 100 acres or 41.42 hectares of land, just located down the road here. And situated on the property is her house and 3 accessory buildings. They're all clustered together and access from Provincial Highway 6. Mrs. Curry would like to sever off a 2-hectare lot. It would be vacant, and it would be to the north off of Gray Road 17. Future development would occur on that 2.0 hectare lot within the existing cleared area. Some of that area is forested. So the application was filed, but not before a series of background studies were done. We did pre-consultation with the township, Jen here, and with the county planning department, and with the conservation authority. We also spoke with the county transportation department first, and they said okay to an entrance. So we wanted to make sure of that before proceeding. The lands are shown as mostly provincially significant. They're shown as significant woodland, the severed parcel, or most of it, except for the clearing. And we asked the Conservation Authority if an environmental impact study would be needed to address this significant woodland matter. They looked at the property and they said no, as long as the building occurs within the clearing. They did, however, say that there was, according to their charts, for threatened and endangered species, there were listings, or a listing of an occurrence of threatened or endangered species somewhere in the area. What that means is their charts stretch upwards of 10 kilometers. So somewhere in the area there was a threatened and endangered species spotted in anywhere between the last year to 20 or 30 years. And so they said that a scoped environmental impact study would be necessary to address that, to see if that species existed on site. And so Mrs. Curry undertook, or paid a consultant, an ecologist, to undertake an environmental impact study or a scoped one, and there were no threatened species or endangered species found on site. So that checked that box. Also, though, before we filed, the county and township planner confirmed that we would have to do a karst assessment, because if you take a look at the county mapping, you will see that area, some of that area is shown up as yellow on the one schedule, which means there's karst topography. Karst topography, if you don't know, generally means cracked bedrock or fissures. So there's always a concern that if you're going to put a septic system on top of cracked bedrock, that the black water will find its way through the crack real quickly and into your drinking water. So we wanted to make sure that the lands weren't karst. So GM Blue Plan was hired to undertake that karst study. And they did 6 test holes, and they determined that there was no evidence of karst features on the property. One other thing that was brought up during pre-consultation was the fact that the lands are identified on Appendix E to the official plan for the county as having a selected bedrock resource, specifically drift 1 to 8 meters. And this is all relatively new mapping in the county official plan. They've had it for a couple of years, and the policies state that just like the sand and gravel deposit constraint mapping that we have in the Grey County official plan, we're supposed to make sure that there isn't a better use of these lands, and that's that in the sense that should they be extracted? In other words, should there be a pit or a quarry on this site? So there had to be a study done to address that issue, and GM Blue Plan was also retained to do that study, and they concluded that there really is a very limited area for sorry, I'm just trying to read my notes here. Yeah, that it's not going to impact. It's not worth preserving. The severance can go ahead, and there's no issue with regard to that bedrock feature. So all these background studies were done in advance of filing the application, and then I filed the application along with my planning report, and it was being processed. And my planning report had confirmed that the severance does conform with the official plan. The way the county official plan reads in the rural designation is that from an original 100-acre, what we call Crown surveyed parcel. So, for example, all of Lot 1, Concession 1, we want to make up a line concession, you could potentially get 3 severances if you meet all the criteria, or 4 when you include the retained parcel. So that's for a 100-acre property. And for a 200-acre property, you can get up to 6, 5 severances, and the 6th would be the retained parcel. Mrs. Curry's property forms part of a property, Crown surveyed lot known as Lot 1, Concession 2, SCD, Geographic Township of Keppel. Again, it's 200 acres, so up to 6 lots can be considered. When we filed the application, when we did all the work, there were only 5 lots. So I made it clear in my planning report that it conformed. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been filing the application. Problem. The county advised us just before Christmas that there may be a problem here. That while we had spent the last year and a half on these working on this application and getting the various background studies done, that one of the neighbors that also forms part of the original Lot 1, Concession 2, SCD had filed an application for consent and got it. So if you will, he took the last severance. Nothing wrong with that, but it puts us in a really awkward spot now. Mrs. Curry, for what it's worth, has dropped about 16,500 in the engineering fees and the environmental impact fees, and my fee as well is in there. And now we're at a point where we've got a little bit of an issue with regard to official plan conformity. You're not going to have see me stand up here with applications and encourage you to approve an application that isn't entirely consistent with the county official plan, because that's not what planners would do. Again, we're in an interesting spot here. The county kind of provided, if you want to call it, a soft recommendation, because they're well aware of the situation. And there is something in Jen's own report that tries to maybe shed a little bit different light on it. And I don't want to steal Jen's thunder, but all the lots in that area are original 100-acre lots. I mean, the original Crown surveys are all 100, except for this one. It's 200. All those other 100-acre lots can have up to 3 lots to be severed off for a total of 4. You would assume that maybe if you apply that same ratio to a 200-acre lot, you could get up to 8 lots, so 7 lots in a retained parcel. That's not the case, though, because this comprises part of an original 200-acre parcel. But when you start comparing what is permitted on lot 1, concession 2, and the number of lots that are created would be allowed on the next 100-acre farm and the next 100-acre farm, what we're asking for would be consistent, if you follow me. And I realize that's somewhat confusing, and I can repeat that or get Jen to repeat that if necessary. So again, it leaves us in an awkward spot here where, you know, we did the pre-consultation, we followed everything we were supposed to do. Mrs. Curry spent a lot of money. There's no fingers to point here. That's not what I'm getting at here. It happened. It's an awkward spot, and yeah, I guess I am asking the committee to give it some consideration. One last thing I'll say, that what Mrs. Curry was hoping to do here was sever off the lot. She had a couple people that were interested in it. She was going to take the proceeds to build herself a second dwelling on the property, a small one for herself, and her son was going to take over the farm property and the house. And so that's where this was going for. That's not really relevant. I mean, when you're taking a look at, you know, good planning versus bad planning, but I thought I'd add that. That's it for my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. So no one is registered with the clerk to comment on the application. Looking to the committee now. Any questions and comments? Committee member Ladresse.
Thank you, Chair. Can you please tell me the date of the pre-con meeting that you had?
Yes, I know the work was conducted in early to mid-summer of 2021. So the initial consultation, I can't give you a date. I can guess that it was somewhere around June of 2021.
Okay. Any other committee members? Oh, council or committee member Ladresse, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, I have one more question. Can you confirm if your clients were circulated on the severance that went through before yours?
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I ask Ms. Kerr to answer that question?
Yes.
Question was, did you receive notification? The question was, did you receive notification in the mail about the other severance?
Yes, I did, but I didn't. Oh, yes, I did, but I didn't think it was part of the original of mine. I figured with my house, and then there's two properties on my left and 2 on my right, and I figured that was 5, including my own. And then I thought, well, I can go ahead and get 1 more. It's a limit of 6. That's why I proceeded with it. I didn't know it was your own plus 6. I thought it was a total of 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee member Ladresse, you can carry on.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a bit of an issue with this. This is an official plan amendment that they're asking for. This is a committee of adjustment for consent and minor variance. That's my comment.
Mr. Davidson, go ahead.
Yeah, it is an official plan issue. We're not asking to amend the official plan. Just asking for the consent to be granted.
Councillor Coburn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Thompson, and through you, if I may, to our senior planner. I wonder, Jen, if you could make comment regarding, I guess, your recommendation, and I think we all understand why you're making the recommendation that you are. I'm curious to know if we have found ourselves in this kind of timing dilemma in the past and how that's been resolved, or if there's some kind of best practice or precedent that's been set before on these types of matters.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Coburn, this has not happened before. I've had discussions with the the director of planning at the county, and he hasn't seen it either. The recommendation is to deny the application because it doesn't conform with the density policy in the rural density policy in the county official plan. The county did provide comments and on the application. So, and just to in terms of moving forward to guarantee that this oversight doesn't happen again, we are working internally and with the county mapping department to change a procedure when related to applications and circulation. One of the things is we receive a number of consultations every year, and the applications never come forward. So there is a we haven't had a an application or pre-consultation tracking procedure in place, but that is something that we've been talking about at the staff level.
Councillor Coburn.
Thanks for that, Jen. And through you, Chair, I guess I'm really feeling for the applicant here. I feel like you got caught in a timing kind of an issue and at your expense, and I'm sure it's caused a certain amount of stress as well. Unfortunately, I'm not inclined to want to vote in favor of something that puts us offside with our official plan. So I'm sorry that's happened. I don't know if that's any consolation.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. I wanted to speak last. Are there any other comments from committee members? Committee member Ladresse.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe Senior Planner Jen can verify, like, how long are pre-cons valid for? Like, in my experience, they're only valid for 1 year. So that would have been summer of 2022, at which time I believe you probably would have had notice of the other severance coming in, because that was approved in November of 2022.
Through your chair to Member Ladresse, we don't have any guarantee on pre-consultations. We don't provide written pre-consultation notes, and it's just dependent on the applicant or the proponent to take notes during any meeting that we have. And typically with the severance application as well, in the rural area, it does involve the county. The county may have some notes. They may have be able to provide some information, but just in terms of the process versus the request through the application, the request is to create a lot. It doesn't comply with the policy, and we should separate the process from the decision that's being requested here.
Thank you, Madam Planner. So, okay, I'm cognizant of my place as the chair, but I have questions also. So I want to ask, because I am feeling I'm feeling awkward about this, and maybe I'll put this out there and see how committee members feel about it. I understand that we feel like we are compelled to deny this based on the county official plan, and yet in the letter from the county, I feel like they opened the door on multiple occasions to contemplate that we may approve this. So I'm a bit confused about that, and I'm not really sure. So I guess that's what makes me a little uncomfortable, is that we're going to hold the line on this official plan. But in my interpretation, when I read their letter, it seems to me that they contemplate us approving this in more than one or two paragraphs. Was that the experience of my colleagues, or am I making something up here? Committee member Glenn.
When I read the county's comments, I think that they have provided an explanation of how the pre-con to their position on OP conformity has gotten to. The concern I have through you, Mr. Chairman, is the applications that were approved on the adjoining property were approved in November 2021 and January of 2022. And this application was made in August of 2022. So they knew well in advance of the application being made that these severances had been approved. So to suggest they got caught, if they were saying we made our application before the decisions were made, I might have some more sympathy for them. But they knew well 8 months after the decisions were made that the application was then formally made for this one. I understand they're doing pre-con, I understand they're doing a whole pile of work, but the onus is on the applicant to ensure that there's an impact on their application, that they determine it. I think the county's trying to explain how the vortex happened over the last year and a half, not provide an exemption for their OP.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Would you like to speak? Yep.
Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, I mean, I think you heard from Mrs. Curry. First of all, yeah, I did not know. There's no way I would have possibly known. I'm not on a mailing list. It was never brought to my attention. So I am the applicant. I had no, I'm not trying to wash my hands of this, but I'm telling you, there's no way I would have known. Mrs. Curry, in her defense, you heard her. I don't think she understood. I realize, not understanding or ignorance, whatever term you want to use, doesn't make anything right. I'm just saying we didn't knowingly submit this. We would not have done this. So I just thought I should make that comment.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. So one last time, no further comments or questions from the committee. So I am going to call for a vote on the motion of the decision. I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Coburn, seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. The recommendation is that it has not been demonstrated that the application B23/22 is consistent with section 5.4.3 of the County of Grey official plan. It is recommended that application B23/22 for lands described as Part Lot 1, Concession 2, SCD, Keppel as in R456095, T/W R456095, Georgian Bluffs, from Heather Curry and the estate of Doug Curry be denied. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. The application is denied. I will now call for an adjournment of this hearing. Moved by Councillor Colburn, seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. I'll call the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. This public meeting is now adjourned. So I'll now move to unfinished business. And the next item on our agenda is a minor variance for Bobcat. Sorry, folks. I'm not sure I have a script for this one, staff.
Mr. Chair, this is unfinished business. It's not a public hearing.
Oh,
So
pardon
there's
me,
no
sorry.
meeting script for that.
Okay, so I'll turn this over to you then, Madame Planner.
Thank you.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. We do need to read the recommendation and get a mover and seconder to put it on the floor.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is an application A-0-22 for Bobcat Grey Bruce Investments to request relief from zoning bylaw 20-020 to reduce the setback to the environmental protection zone from 15 meters to 10 meters, to permit a building addition onto the existing building, and to permit a covered porch to project 2.29 meters into the required front yard where the bylaw permits a 2-meter projection, satisfies the 4 tests of section 45, paragraph 1 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, C.P.13. It is recommended that application A-02-22 be approved. Looking for a mover. Councillor Colburn, looking for seconder. Committee Member Glenn. All those in favor? Oh, we'll put the motion on the floor, sorry. And I'll turn it over to you, Madame Planner.
So this application was considered by the previous Committee of Adjustment, and there was a public hearing, I believe, back in March, March 15th. Comments have been outstanding from the Ministry of Transportation, and we received them recently, which is why we're bringing the application back. As noted in the planning report, the general comments back from the agencies note no concerns with the application, and the ministry is accepting of the engineering works as well as the minor variance. There is an application for a site plan agreement, and within that agreement, all the recommendations of the stormwater management study would be captured within that agreement. The applicant will be required to obtain Ministry of Transportation permits prior to the building addition occurring. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Committee Member Glenn, I think I saw your hand up. Floor is yours.
It's just a question of clarification, Mr. Chairman. The minor variance is reducing the setback from 15 meters to 10 meters. Is that for the entirety of the site or as it relates to the site plan?
Through your chair to Member Glenn, it is just for the building addition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Do we have any further questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, are we ready to make a decision? Would you like me to read the recommendation again? Oh, Committee Member Glenn.
It's voting.
Okay, sorry. Do we need me to read the recommendation again? I'll read it anyway. Application A-022 for Bobcat to request relief from zoning bylaw 2020-20 to reduce setback to the environmental protection zone from 15 meters to 10 meters, to permit a building addition onto the existing building and to permit a covered porch to project 2.29 meters into the required front yard where the bylaw permits a 2-meter projection. Satisfies the 4 tests of section 45, paragraph 1 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, C.P.13. It is recommended that application A-02-22 be approved. All those in favor? That motion is carried. So I believe that is all the business that we have before us for tonight. So the date of our next regular meetings is the Committee of Adjustment on February 14th, 2023 at 5 p.m. I'll be there in person, so it'll be maybe moderately smoother, and it'll be nice to see everybody in person. So I'm going to call for an adjournment. Looking for a mover. Committee Member Glenn, and seconded by Councillor Coburn. All those in favor? That motion's carried. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.